Oh, Graham! Oh. Hey, it's time for the podcast, man! Oh, okay, let's go, get on! Yo, dude! Hey, buddy! All right, man. Let's do it! All right. All right. Adam O'Brien,
Dude.
Thanks for being on the show, man.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation. When I first met you, I was like, I love this guy's energy. I love his positivity. He's a family man, and he's doing something very unique, something that no one else is really doing in today's world. And I wanted to talk to you about your journey into Bitcoin well, but also who you are as a person and carving of your own path, because that's what this podcast is about, is really talking to people about how they carve their own path in life, the challenges that they overcome, and how they navigate that, because I really think that you have a lot of interesting things to share. You're a family man, you're a father of 4.
Yeah.
You also coach hockey with your son. You've been doing this Bitcoin well now for a long time, 10 years?
Yeah, I've been in Bitcoin for almost 11 years now.
11 years.
Yeah.
Fantastic, dude. So we got a lot to talk about, but let's start back in the beginning here. When you were a kid, you loved to sell things. So tell me the story of when you were selling things as a kid.
Man, I just loved finding things and then just getting rid of them and getting money. And my dad was a traveling salesman. And when he used to leave, he actually stopped telling me not to sell stuff because it didn't work. He told me what I could sell, kind of like, manipulated me to give me a box to play in almost, which was, it was pretty funny. But, my sister was always, livid that I would get a game console for her and I to play, and then I would sell it and buy a different one, and she didn't want
And you didn't think about what your sister would say?
You know what, man? No, and it makes me sound so like I'm a narcissist, like I'm some kind of like, evil man, but I just love the art of, somebody's going to find more value in this than I do.
Yeah.
They're going to give me money, which is, the root of their value. And that's a great trade. And so I used to love, buying and selling stuff. Like I just swap things, couches, appliances.
And how did you find people to buy this stuff? Were you online?
Yeah, or like back in the day, like, there's no online. This is like, when I was 10 or 12, there's no like Kijiji or whatever. So it'd be, just find people at school, or if someone was like, hey, I really wish I had this, I'd be like, oh, I got one of those. Like I could probably, bring that to school tomorrow if you wanted, or like whatever it might be.
Oh, wow.
And just kind of started flipping stuff.
Yeah. So what was your first job?
First job was like paper route is like kind of probably everyone's first job.
Yeah.
And then my first real job was at Sobeys.
Okay.
But then my first job where I went and got paid somewhere, I was a little bit too young to work, but lucky for me, this like golf course, the kitchen let me come and scrub dishes, and I was very appreciative because I wanted to play a lot of golf, and I couldn't really afford to play a lot of golf, and so got to go and wash dishes and play golf and eat food, and man, it's
amazing.
It was a great thing.
So now we're at your vacation lake house here, which is fantastic. You're doing very well. You're the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Well. It's a publicly traded company as well.
Yeah.
Now, fantastic. So you've made great strides.
Yeah, I guess
in your
so.
life,
Yeah,
significant for being 31.
Yeah.
Father of 4, which is, I think, fantastic. What has been your biggest learning of pain in your life? What has been a challenge in your life that you're like, man, this was really difficult, but it set me up to succeed in my life?
Ooh, I don't know if I could point to one specific instance. More of like probably like a mindset. People have always, being in Bitcoin for so long, you get called a lot of crazy things throughout. I've always had pretty contrarian views. Growing up in school was always probably not like the best student, had a difficult time paying attention in class and didn't love being there. I was always pretty like quick-witted. And so I'd get in some arguments with my authority figures and kind of had some problems with authority. And then finding Bitcoin, people used to call me like crazy or like a scam artist or, and so finding ways to make Bitcoin less scary, less nefarious, and maybe more approachable, while still battling with like the constant onset of pressure towards like, am I a bad person? Is Bitcoin good? Is Bitcoin bad? Why are these people who I trust and respect telling me to stop? And really overcoming them, time after time after time. I think my dad has a great story. One of his friends, right, like in peak, we're going public, Bitcoin's at all-time highs a couple of years ago. My dad's friend says, oh man, like, Adam, he sure got lucky with that Bitcoin stuff. My dad was like, Adam is not lucky. Adam gets told no 7,000 times. And he's like, and the kid just won't listen. He just won't stop. He just keeps going and going and going. And that's kind of how I've always been, is just persevering, finding that path. I am actually not convinced that there's ever an impossible thing to do. There's just, a path that you haven't found yet. And so I'm pretty big on just, when I get my mindset on something, it's pretty tough to turn me off of it unless you can really, debate and out logic me. And I'm pretty first principles approach.
So it's very logical for you then. You're like, if this makes sense, I'm going to go for it. Or is there like a mystery of, intuition in there as well?
Yeah, I would say on the macro, it's certainly logic focused, but on the next path to get there, it probably drives like my team insane, because lots of times I won't be able to articulate it or
why, whatever. Yeah.
Or, like, how does this make sense? And it's like, but then like talking about it more and with prompts, how do we respond to this? How do we respond to this? The whole thing kind of comes out, but I'm pretty bad at, getting the entire thing from brain to lips and then out. Like you did a great job like having a vision here and like setting all of this good stuff up and like fantastic. I don't know that I've got the ability to go from A to Z in that clean of emotion. I'm kind of like a bit of a
But I am too, man. Like this whole thing for everybody watching this podcast, it was like an evolution.
Totally.
Originally, I was like, I want to shoot it over here. I want to do this.
And then problem arises and we move over.
Yeah, so it's all about problems and then how do you adjust? And I also believe that, personally, that God's plan is far better than my plan.
Totally.
So I have a plan and I start to move towards it, but then the problem arises or whatever happens and I'm like, okay, so it's not here, it's over here.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly sort of iterating, kind of like surfing. I'm kind of like feeling the wave, trying to find that sweet spot.
Yes.
And it works out way better that way.
Dude, and having the ability to humble yourself to God's plan is actually like probably one of the single greatest things that humans can do.
Yeah.
Just to like submit like that and have the ultimate low time preference of like generations. And like biblically speaking, there are humans throughout history that had to go through the pains their bloodline could like abundance like you never believe.
Yeah.
And it's to have the amount of humility and trust in God to allow yourself to go through that level of pain, so that your bloodline, or with the trust that your bloodline will survive and thrive like that, is pretty cool.
Amen, dude. You have a phrase that you use. I'm not sure if you coined it, but you say, I don't buy Bitcoin for my first name, I buy it for my last name.
Totally. Yeah, didn't coin that.
You didn't coin that. Okay.
But I do say it a lot, and I feel like it is becoming one with the Adam brand here.
Yeah.
Man, like that's what Bitcoin is for. Bitcoin is ultimately, it is not some speculative investment so you can go out and buy a Lamborghini later on. The fiat system has completely deranged our mental capacity to think about money past ourselves, and even past ourselves at this day. Like, there's retirement savings plans and stuff, which is just a giant Ponzi scheme here in Canada. And Bitcoin truly is, like, when I have Bitcoin in cold storage, I'm thinking about, and I talk about it all the time, like my great-great-granddaughter, whom I probably am never going to meet, should be the benefit of my hard work today. And if we can teach and embody a low time preference mindset and, the Bitcoin ethos principles coupled with like a solid Jesus founded relationship, like we're unstoppable. That's like, there's just, it is complete and utter path to love and prosperity and like actually changing the world. And I hope that, my parents, set them up, and my parents are way better off than their parents were.
Yeah.
Lucky for me, I am also like way better off than my parents were, thanks to the hard work and sacrifice that they made. Like, how long can we have this compound? And now we have a tool to act as money that actually enables that level of leapfrog growth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dude,
bullish.
I love that. Thank you. I want to talk two points I want to touch on. You talked about low time preference. Maybe some people out there watching or listening right now, they're like, what does that mean?
Right.
I mean, on the surface, you can kind of get an idea of it, but in Bitcoin specifically, that's a very key component.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I want to talk about God's plan, your own spiritual path of Christianity and how that kind of connects with Bitcoin as well. So let's start with low time preference. What does that mean and why is that important?
At the surface, you can start to understand it as later gratification, as the ability to push gratification into the future. But actually, I think it's deeper than that, and it's a level of pain tolerance. Like delayed gratification is just foregoing, maybe positive things, but how much pain are you actually willing to endure so that you can have, infinitely more? Like delayed gratification is just delaying the same gratification later on for maybe better timing or whatever. Yeah. But time preference is actually enduring a certain level of sacrifice so that the future abundance or the future, benefit or gratification will be so much stronger. And I think, how much do you value the present versus how much do you value the future? And if I said to you, I'll give you $100 today or $101 tomorrow, you'll take the $100 today because tomorrow I might not be here or whatever. But if I said to you, I'll give you $100 today or $1 million tomorrow or $1 million in 30 days, now we got to think a little bit, right? $100 today will get me X, Y, and Z. But can I, especially if you're down to your last nickel, you got nothing left. It's like, okay, can I be homeless for 30 days at the chance of $1 million in the future? And now we're starting to get into some time preference discussions, and with the kids and raising children in that environment, it's a balance.
And do your kids understand this low time preference thing? That video online with the two marshmallows. It's like you can have one now or two later.
Yeah, totally.
Do you teach them this, or how do you teach this lesson to them?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly try to. We talk about time preference. We talk about why time preference is important. I'm big on teaching the kids why what I say is what I say. And then I'm big on, inviting them to challenge me on my why. Now I'm a lot smarter than they are right now, so I have the benefit there. Yeah. But I do feel like, especially my oldest son, he's getting the ability to kind of think for himself and kind of understand, what's going on. And he looks more to his logic and his heart and his head for answers more than me. Which as a dad is very special. It's very cool to see him turning into a young man and have the ability to start thinking about the future in that way.
Yeah, nice, dude. Nice. I think it's so cool that you're a father of 4, you run a business, you also coach hockey. You just invited a bunch of friends out here to your lake house. You're someone who is, at least from my perspective, enjoying life, soaking it up, and like a family man too. A lot of people that do really well in business, they don't have that sort of family life. Yeah. But you found a way to balance that and dedicate time towards your family. So what's your secret? What's the secret to this? Or is it just a value system?
It's a value system, and it's probably like anything, finding a balance, right? Yeah. And how do you enjoy life? I'm sure I'm going to have regrets in the future about not being able to be here or there or watch certain things or be a part of certain times in their lives. But at the end of the day, I try to, lower my time preference and just understand what am I going to wish for the most in 30 years, and then reverse engineer that back to today and act accordingly.
So what are you going to wish for most in 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, in 30 years, I want self-sufficient kids. Okay. I want kids that are, taking the benefits of my life and my efforts and leapfrogging them into their life and their efforts. I want them and us as a family unit to be, strong followers of Jesus and have a Jesus-centric environment in our home. I want our home to be very loving. My wife and I want our relationship to be stronger than ever and growing year over year over year. And so as a result, it's just finding that balance. But then I also I want to help change the world. I want people to understand that Bitcoin is a freedom tool. Bitcoin has the ability to lock your time in value and shoot it into the future. And I want people to be the benefactory of that. And so it's that balancing act. And sometimes when I'm working too hard, my wife reminds me hey, it's probably time to hire someone to do this. You've got your vision out, you've got your process now. Come on, it's time to pass that on.
So she's got your back in that way of seeing the balance. Oh, he's a little off balance here.
Yeah. And she's so gentle. She's so, her ability to read my mind and then speak about my pain and then offer me the logical solution is next level. I mean, there's a saying, what is it? Behind every great man is an even better woman. Yeah, 100%. And people ask the 4 kids, how does this work? You're all over the place, and it's super wife. It's she's super wife, super mom. She's cooking for us. And I'm big on the kids' extracurricular activities. I want them out. I want them learning and doing and being active. And so like I'll rip home from work and she's got like this big lunch and dinner planned, and
Fantastic.
we're in the car. I'm taking the kids to whatever skating practice or gymnastics or dance or hockey or like whatever it might be. And she's just like, you know, picking up my tornado of chaos and just putting it back in. And then sometimes, you know, she'll say like, you know, hey, there's always something with us. Like, cause I'll like, you know, we're doing something and I'll be like, hey, we got to actually like also do this other crazy plan. And she's like, yeah, okay. But there's always something, isn't there? Like, so she's definitely helping me find the balance. And that's pretty awesome.
Let's talk about your faith, your spiritual practice. So were you born Christian? Did you follow?
Born into a home that valued going to church. I wouldn't say it was the heart of our home. But when I was probably 12 or so, started going to a youth group at the church that we like attended, you know, I'd say once a month or so. We weren't quite like creasters, but we were definitely not like, I didn't walk in and know everybody.
Okay.
And so when I was 12, found a youth group. Lucky for me, found just an incredible group of friends and started just going to church, getting to know everyone. You know, I'm a pretty like boisterous guy, make a lot of friends, very high energy, as you kind of pointed out earlier. And so it was very easy for me to make friends. And you know, I was 12 years old, like very influential time in my life. And I had like these grade 9 guys that were kind of like adopting me into their circles, getting to hang out with the older kids. And then, you know, they all moved to grade 10 and I was in grade 8. So it was like, I got to hang out with high schoolers and, you know, some of the, like, they were also like kind of the cool kids. So I was like, you know, I was like super young hanging out with the 17, 18-year-olds, just being like, you know, I was part of it. And so I had this incredible status experience, not like in an egotistical way, but just like, I was very invited and I was very lucky to have that experience. And then I remembered that. And so when I was like 17, 18, still in the church, you know, tried to
do that, pass it on.
And that's kind of what the world is all about. And then, and then throughout that time, like the world takes over, right? So I've got this, you know, pretty strong faith, I would say, in my young teens and into my teenage years. And then, transitioned from a public high school into a Christian high school to be with my friends for the last couple of years of high school, and then left high school and kind of got wrapped up by the world, you know, went down like a path of partying and drinking and you know, substance abuse and leaving that kind of, it's funny how like you can't do both. Like your soul and your heart, you know, longs for one thing, and then you act on it, and then everything else gets pushed aside. And so that it was actually, it's so cool, man. Like within that time frame, that's where I met Christina, my wife.
Were you doing drugs and getting drunk and all?
Well, I never really fell down like too bad of the, but I was like drinking, I would say, is definitely a problem for, like, I have a very addictive personality.
Oh yeah.
And so it, you know, it's hard. Yeah. And so she meets me and we're partying and we're like living. She's like not a Christian, never like didn't grow up in a Christian home.
Oh
like,
really?
Just
okay.
You know. And one day I just woke up and I was just like, hey, like actually we should go to church. And she was like, oh, like back, like supportive. Well, if that's important to you, like, okay, sure, let's go. Kind of reconnect with my friends from high school, like some of them same path as me, some of them, you know, not so much. And then just like run back in. And then, you know, my wife like really dives in, like, you know, she gets baptized a year and a half later.
Oh wow.
Her and I get engaged, we get married. And it's just like complete 180.
Wow.
Like I like, you know, I haven't had a drop of alcohol in almost 10 years. Like really just repointed my heart to Jesus. Yeah. Started the business, started having, you know, got married, started the business, started having kids, like da. And yeah, here we are, you know,
dude,
10 years later.
Thank you for sharing that. So is there a moment, or do you remember a thought when you looked at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I gotta go to church, or I'm done with this. I can't do this partying anymore. Was it like one bad night, or was it just one morning you woke up and you're just like, your soul, you felt like, I can't do this?
Yeah, it was probably that. It was probably like, my greatest success is because I can run every scenario out to just the utmost extreme.
Okay.
And I was kind of just like, waking up after probably a rough night or something and just being like, I wonder how this ends. Like, how does this end when I'm 50?
So similar to what you were saying earlier.
Exactly
like
the
seeing
same.
30 years ahead.
Yeah.
Is this what I want?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I've always wanted to like do the hockey coach and be the successful businessman and have the family and, you know, be able to travel and afford the life and whatever. And I was kind of just like, hey, is this the best way to get that?
Right.
And like, obviously not, right? Like it's tough, you know, and you think about it, like that sobriety compounds so heavily, you know, if like the stage that I was in, I probably had less than 50 sober days a year. And so like you just
Wow.
don't get to produce at a high level compared to 365
Wow.
sober days a year. And that, it allowed me to sleep less, which allowed me to be more energetic throughout the day, which allowed me to think better. My good thoughts from yesterday transitioned into building thoughts tomorrow, and then the next day and the next week and the next year.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, I'm like a Superman. Like I've got so many more solid days of clear-headed thinking towards the future goal and the mission.
Yeah.
And it just compounds like crazy.
Wow, dude. I love that. Why did you feel yourself falling into alcohol and partying and stuff with that? Was it just something you wanted to explore? Was it something you were just like, man, I don't want to be a part of this church community. I want to try something new. Or what led you to that path of like, pleasure and partying and what got you there?
I think it was like, part of it just being like the world sucks you in when you're that age.
Okay.
Growing up,
the outside world was more important than the inside world at that point.
Yeah, good way to put it. I haven't put it that way, but I would agree.
Yeah.
Certainly the environment that I put myself in. Like I went to bartend. I looked at who was successful around me. Successful entrepreneur looked like restaurant bar owner. And it was like, okay, well, this is how you do that. And what is the scene here? Well, this is how you do that. As I told you, I'm very charismatic and outgoing and life of the party. And, it's easy to do that in that environment. And so it just, it wasn't ever like, I'm rejecting all of this.
Right,
it was kind of just like a
slow pivot,
a slow fade until before you know it, you're just driving down a path and you're like, hey, is this the best way to get what I want? I don't think it actually is.
It's like that saying of like, you are who you spend the most amount of like your time with.
Yeah. What are you, an average of the 7 people you spend the most time with or something like that? Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So you witnessed yourself kind of shifting off course.
Yeah.
Outside world more important, or the environment of these are how these people are being successful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mirror that.
Yeah.
And then it was like, this is not who I want to be. 30 years down the road, this is not what I'm not going to get what I'm looking for.
Totally.
So then you pivoted, you go back to church, you bring your wife with you.
Yeah. My then girlfriend.
Oh, girlfriend?
Yeah. But exactly. Like, and it was like, hey, like, what's up? Great to see you. And obviously like the church is like re-inviting and like, not like they ever like banished me, but it was like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Like, what's up? Great to see you. I was so lucky to just be propped back into the world that I was already, a very big fan of and people were a fan of me in. So it was a good time in my life. And, and our story of my wife and I, like we just started there. And isn't it cool how talk about God's plan? Like, it's how her and I meant to be together because we like that I go through this and have the like my parents and whomever to let me go down this road, not be like gripping into pulling my collar out so that I can meet my wife, bring her to Jesus and her and I can raise this incredible family is like, dude low time preference.
Yeah. And that level of like, I would call that like the highest, strongest love.
Totally.
To allow someone to, metaphorically like trip and fall and get back up.
Yep.
Whereas, the initial reaction is like, oh, help them up.
Alleviates,
take away that pain from them. But they need that pain.
Yeah. The physics says, pain will help us grow. And, our bodies are designed to rip and tear in order to grow. We have growing pains. It's like my daughter right now, she's up like 3 nights a week. She's like, my knees are so sore. And I'm like, yeah, this is what you got for the next 5 years. Like you're going through immense growth, but it's painful.
Yeah.
And I think that plays through into our lives.
100%. What is your relationship to God, to Jesus now? Do you go to church every Sunday still? Do you pray? What is your experience of your relationship to God?
Yeah, we definitely go to church every Sunday or watch church, like if we're not in the building.
Okay,
we
like
watch
a virtual
online.
thing?
Yeah, like just like a live stream pretty much.
Okay.
My wife and I try to read the Bible together as much as possible and then also separately. I would say though that I've got this presentation that I've given twice now called Jesus is a Bitcoiner, talking about how the ethos of Bitcoin actually aligns like pretty strongly with the teachings of Jesus, 2000 years ago. And so designing that presentation over the last like year, maybe a little bit longer than a year now, has really allowed me to combine kind of two of my like greatest passions and read the Bible. And I've had this great group of friends to, watch and give me feedback like, hey, actually you're pretty off base on this piece. Here's what I think about that. Here's what the Bible says. And I'm like, I disagree or I agree. And it's been really great to have kind of some iron sharpens iron conversations and then, dive into the Bible and pray and like, God, where do you want me to take this and where and the business and where can I go from here? And, do the best I can. I'm like a firm believer that if you have a relationship with God and ask God where he wants you to be, your actions just can't be that bad. As long as you truly, and this is where you need that internal love and respect for yourself, because if you truly are following God and wanting his guidance, your actions will show that. If you're secretly like, oh yeah, but I want the power, oh, but I want the fame, but I want the money, it'll come out,
Yeah.
and your actions will like not be good.
Yeah.
But when you're truly following God, people are like, how do I know? How do I know? It's like, just trust God. Like just seek guidance and then act. And the more that you act and gain that confidence, it just, again, it compounds more and more and more until you are truly just a surrogate for the Lord's actions. And that's a cool thing.
I agree, man. This is my favorite thing to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, like the inside of the human, the heart.
This second season of my podcast, I really am curious about guidance, because everybody, whether they're Christian or they're not Christian or agnostic, I feel like everybody has a sense of a compass of what they need to do, what they, maybe it's their ego and they want to be self-seeking. But sometimes people call it like appreciation or intuition. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. But I'm always curious about how people tune in to find their path in life. And also, like, people asked you, how do I know? Is this what God wants me to do? And so what I always say, but I want to hear you as well, for me, it's about trusting in the stillness, being present and still. And then I can feel it in my whole being. And it's like, I'm always shown just the next step.
Right.
So I know when we were setting up this podcast, I'm like, I don't know what it's all going to look like, but I know the next step is this.
Right.
And then from there, it's a constant, for me, communication or prayer of connection to God, of like just staying open and listening.
Right.
And then it's like a little whisper. It's like, and what about this? It's like a very fun, like, little light thing. It's not forcing me. It's not saying, you should do this, and if you don't.
Yeah. Off with your head.
Yeah. Very subtle like that. Now, sometimes in my life, if I'm way off path, I'll get, car accident or something will hit me in the side of the head, or there'll be a physical sort of like, almost like a slap in the face kind of thing.
Wake up.
But it's not, there's always like a reasonable, logical way of like dismissing it.
Right.
But in my heart, I can feel it. It's like,
Yeah.
So is that the same for you?
Yeah, I would say I struggle at the stillness. That's probably the next season of my life, is learning to embrace the stillness and find God in the stillness. I think I find God, ironically, in a logical place right now.
Oh, interesting.
And
okay.
When I think about, and logic tied to faith, I have no, absolutely, it's zero leap for me to understand God as a creator, God as a surveyor, God as a protector, and God as a king. And so I just believe and know that he set up the universe in a certain way, that with the physics that are involved. And the physics, as much as gravity, are you need to follow God and God's plan so that you can continue on and thrive. And so I find myself actually probably more logically connected to God than spiritually or emotionally connected to God. And I think that's probably the next area of growth for me is finding the stillness, finding the more emotional side of things. And like you said, I can kind of feel it getting tugged out, like God kind of pushing.
So you can feel it.
Yes. Yeah. And you know, because like I said, because you're asking, because you're there looking for it.
You're open to it.
And you're open to it, but also you're aware that it should come. Like, we're not sat here like, oh wow, that was a surprise. Like, I'm asked to go here. Well, I guess it's like no. You're aware that when you are following Jesus, he's going to call you to do certain things. And so you're thinking, is this a calling? Is this what I should be doing? Is this where I should be going? And as a result, you're more attuned to it and going to understand it more. And
blessings, this is one of the things that I say. I was raised Catholic. I'm not a practicing Christian or Catholic anymore, but I have a very unique, for me, it's very sacred for me, and unique in terms of my own life and my own experience, relationship to God. And it's my highest priority of that in my life. It's number one, integrity with myself and with God. And what I have found in my own experience is that when you are aligned, when you are listening, blessings rush in your life beyond what you could have tried to take from life and try and squeeze out and make. It's like God's plan. Oh man.
Yeah. It's better for you.
Yeah. And compared to your plan, you're like, oh my God, like I couldn't have imagined this. This is way better.
Totally.
But it requires that faith and that courage to surrender, to let go, and to move into the places of your life that are extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't want to go, or you don't want to talk to this person, or you don't want to say you're sorry, or you don't, whatever. You don't want to start this
Humble
business.
yourself.
Yeah, humble yourself.
Speak out, do something, what you feel is right, 100%.
Yeah, man. So,
but it's interesting because if the end goal is the blessings and the prosperity, then it's almost not, it won't work. Like you need to actually, if you've seen the Bitcoin meme where I think it's someone talking to, maybe it's Neo in the Matrix saying like, you're saying one day I'll be able to sell these Bitcoin for millions and buy anything I want. He's saying, no, I'm saying one day you won't want to. And that's, I think, wraps in perfectly what God expects of us is, you're saying, Jesus, if I follow you into my life, I'm going to have a mansion and I'm going to have all these friends, I'm going to have status. It's like, well, like, yes, I can give that to you. But actually, when you don't want that is when you're going to get it.
Get it, yes.
and that's the crazy thing is he does that and only when you can afford to get that. Because myself, like look at myself, I turn into an adult, I have all this power and I abuse it and it throws me down a path that is unhealthy and not good for anyone. Because I was not obviously ready to control and assume that power. And if you get the blessings and the status and the power and the money when you're not so acutely in tune with God, like he'll almost, I think, prevent you from getting that until you are in that way. And then when you're in that way, that stuff kind of doesn't matter anymore. You're almost like, and like we're so lucky. Like we have, a lifestyle that is, again, beyond my dreams. But it's also like we stay here probably the least out of my like friends and family. And when we're here, we're with friends and family and, people in our lives are like, hey, can I use the cabin? Like this. Like, yep, it's yours. Like, here's the key, get out. And they're like, okay, great. Like, could we pay? It's like, no. Like get out there, enjoy it. It's all there. All the stuff you need is here. And I feel like it's because, we're not worried about like, oh, well, yeah, you got to have there's a fee for this and you got to make sure you replace this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. Like it's not really ours. It's kind of like a vessel that we are just permitted to use for this time. And that's what my wife and I talk about with our kids. When she prays, she always thanks God for giving us the ability to parent the children on earth. Beautiful. And it's like, oof, that's like such a, like, these are my kids. Like, no. These are God's kids. And lucky for you, you get to hang out with them for a few decades before they go back home. Beauty, dude. And that's like when you're thinking in that way, it's special.
And that's a perspective that I feel comes from this inner world. So once you start taking care of your relationship to God or Jesus, as you would say, that process of centering yourself in this relationship shifts all how you see the outside world. Now I'm not trying to get the house or the car or the girls or whatever to feel valuable.
Totally.
I feel valuable internally, and these things show up.
Totally.
And then I want to share them because I'm like, I'm full.
Yeah.
I don't need this to make me feel full.
Exactly.
Here. You enjoy too.
Enjoy too.
Enjoy. Let's go. Let's go do this.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this food is amazing. Here, try some. You have to enjoy this with me.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Amen, dude. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things I love to dive into as an actor, I always like to understand people's emotions because I've done a lot of acting in my life, and I want to understand, when I'm playing a character or whatnot, I always want to go like, why do they feel this way? How does it feel? All these different things. So for Adam, in your experience of connecting with Jesus and God, however you want to say that, you said, for the most part, it's been very logical, but you do feel a pull in your heart. You can feel that. So when you do feel God's guidance or God's plan or the Holy Spirit in your life, what is the experience for you? Is it a subtle one? Is it a pull in your heart? Where do you experience?
Yeah, I'd say it's subtle. It's nagging.
Okay, nagging.
And it's constant. Or sorry, not constant as in all day, every day, but constant as in every time I think about this, I am, leaning in this direction.
Okay.
And it's in passion. It's in like, doing my presentation called Jesus is a Bitcoiner for the first time was an accident. And it was something that I was going to speak on something totally different.
Yeah.
And then as I was, researching for this presentation, this Jesus kind of conversation came out of it. And I was like, I texted the organizers and I was like, hey guys, like I'm going to pivot here. And they were kind of like, well, I don't know. And I was like, no, this is going to be amazing. And then like, okay, let's do it. And it was amazing. It was like well received. But that was like a big out of my comfort zone. I'm just branching into this speaking environment. I'm just getting a little bit of, Bitcoin, like clout to be able to go to these events and speak and impart some of my wisdom and help teach people about Bitcoin and the broader ethos of Bitcoin. And so I was, quite nervous to do that. And then it was good. And then I got another opportunity and another opportunity. And then, we have a couple opportunities within the business unrelated to, Jesus is a Bitcoiner at all, and learning and growing. And it just feels like, back to when you act on something, there was no like lightning, spelling like, the thing to do, step 1, step 2, step 3. But there was certainly like positive reinforcement throughout this. And then, things get busy. I kind of back away. I say no to a couple engagements. And it's like, God is like, no, remember, like, we're gonna white pill the Bitcoiners here. Like, he's like, hey, I showed you Bitcoin 10 years ago. I gave you a passion for Bitcoin. I helped you understand what Bitcoin is with your faith background. And now you're going to merge these two worlds. And I do feel like, I want to orange pill the church, but I want to white pill the Bitcoiners. And it is amazing to me, since, kind of speaking in this way and having this attached to my brand, I guess, seeing people reach out and be like, dude, I've been thinking about this. Tell me more. Even this week, like at the Bitcoin Rodeo, I have like multiple people coming up to me be like, hey, I love that Jesus is a Bitcoiner presentation you've given. Can we talk more about this? Like, can I get your number and talk about it? And it's like, this is cool.
Dude. That's great.
And it's very inspiring and uplifting. And again, I've got friends who are Christians that are kind of like, hey, like you're treading some lines here. Like this is starting to sound a little worldly and not very godly. But I feel like God is giving me the ability to speak to these people, and I'm resonating with them and they're understanding it. And I feel like he's going to use that for a positive way. And so I'm going to keep on like, prayerfully and spiritually considering my next actions. But it feels good right now.
I thank you for sharing that. And I want to hear a little snippet of Jesus is a Bitcoiner for everyone watching. He's like, what can you give me
what
a
does this mean? Right.
But I also want to just kind of recap there about, so for you, God's guidance, and you experience that as it's like an action and it feels good. There's a synchronicity to it. There's a clicking to it.
Positive reinforcement.
There's a flow to it.
Yeah.
Positive reinforcement.
Time. Yeah. Big time. And you act, you step out of comfort zone. It goes well. There's release, and then there's reinforcement. Do it again.
Yes. Okay.
Like I wasn't even off the stage in Costa Rica giving it for the first time, and someone's like, hey, will you give this again? Like here. It's like, oh wow. Yeah. Like
so what's interesting is there's a portion of your life where you were saying that your dad was like, no, you can't tell him no, like he's just going to do it. Right. So there's a part of Adam that is like, hey, I like this. I want to pursue this, even if there's no positive reinforcement. Even if people are telling me I don't like this. There's a part of you that's like, I know I want to do this. And then there's another part of Adam that's like, hey, I'm going to do Jesus as a Bitcoiner. I don't know if this is going to work, but I feel like I need to, do this. And people are like, wow, that was great. You're like, okay, so it's
working.
There's like, so there's like
I think the difference is like I have just a lot more of respect and fear for God than I do for men. And so when a man tells me you can't, there's always a level of like, watch.
Okay.
But if God were to like, put up some obvious signs that was like, hey, stop. I fear God and respect God a lot more than man. And so that would be the end of that. But again, if God were to tell me that, he wouldn't say, stop talking about Jesus. He would say, do it in this way. And it would be a pivot. It wouldn't be a stop. It would be like, hey, you're going down the wrong path. Let's change to this way. And I think that would be, just better.
Talking about fearing God. Why do you fear God?
Yeah, fear is not so much, I feel like people, like they hear that in the Bible, they hear that at church, and they're like, well, yeah, because God's got the big band hammer and he can just like put you away. But I fear God in the same way that my children fear me. Like when my kids are hurt, they run to me because I'm their protector. And when my son is struggling with something, he's talking to me and he's asking me the questions. And so when I speak, there's a level of respect that they get, because it's almost like it's a fear of missing out on being with God. Just like my kids would fear missing out on, the time we spend together, whether it be on the lake or whether it be at the dinner table or solving a problem together or playing sports or whatever. And so when I say something like, hey, there's an amount of trust for me that when I give them direction, like my kids, in a certain way, they understand and agree with blind faith, not because they are scared of me. They're acting out of fear of almost like FOMO, like fear of missing out on the plans that I have for them. And likewise me to God. Like what, I would can you imagine getting to heaven and God being like, dude, we had all this good stuff planned. Like, what were you doing? And being like, well, I just wasn't sure if what you said was what you meant. So I just didn't do anything. But we're here. So, like, that's cool. Like, could you imagine? And him being like, dude, like, we could have changed the world. We could have, 1 million people could have, like, heard the gospel. Like, I could have used you and this energy that I gave you and the brain that I gave you and the logic and the heart and your history and your past. We could have done so much. And then me be like, yeah, but you know,
I got some good parties in there.
Yeah, right. And so I think it's like a fear of that, and then also, you know, a fear of God. Like, yeah, there is a healthy respect. Like, you know, it talks about when Moses saw the bush, like the burning bush, he's like, I cannot look. Like it is too much glory for the mortal man to experience, and there is just that. It's a healthy reminder of the power dynamic that exists between you and God. You know, we humanize God. Jesus literally was a human, and the Bible and churches talk about bringing God down to earth, and he wants a relationship. But we cannot forget that he is divine, and we cannot forget that, you know, people cannot look at God in the face. Like there's just an incredible power dynamic between us and God, and that fear drives you to respect, which then drives you to obedience and abundance and growth.
Thank you for diving into this, because I've always been curious when people say they fear God, and I was like, well, fear to me is like, you know, it's false evidence appearing real, is one way of putting it. You know, so in some people say, you know, look fear in the face and move into it. Don't run from things. So when people said I fear God, I'm like, well, why would you fear God?
That's not good.
Yeah, I get respecting God. I get the sacredness and the sort of glory of God and the magnitude and the sort of like reverence for God. But I never understood why someone would fear God. So you're saying fear for you is just like the totality and the magnificence is in the utmost respect is so overwhelming, and you want to be close. You don't ever want to be disconnected from God.
You fear being
away. Fear being disconnected. So what is the opposite of the fear of God? Would be the love for God, the love to connect to God, or how would you describe?
Well, I mean, the opposite of love is not hate. It's what is the word? Like, I don't care. Yes, apathy. And so, yeah, probably apathy towards God. The opposite of God. Like think about the biblical characters that we learn about. Yeah. None of them are ever like, you know, low key, I'll take God if I want him or not. They're like, they're furious at God in some cases. Like, God, how could you do this? This is your fault. You know, like read the Psalms. Like it's a love letter and also a mental exercise of battle towards God. You know, the Bible's not full of people being like, yeah, he's there and maybe we'll talk to him, maybe we won't. Or if there is, those people get wiped out. And so, yeah, I think the opposite of that way. But I also put it like, you know, you in the acting world or like in the sport, like I think the sports is like the easiest thing. Like as a hockey player, you know, today on planet Earth, Connor McDavid is the best hockey player in the history of the game. And like, imagine a young, not my son's age, but like a little bit older, like someone who actually could do it, aspiring hockey player. If he were in the presence of like a Connor McDavid, he's not like, you know, arrogant and cocky and like, you know, I'm the best. He's like, whoa, I'm in the presence of the GOAT. I'm going to cool down and see what I can learn here. I've got a fear. I've got a healthy amount of fear, you know, for this environment, for this situation. Not because Connor McDavid is that scary, but just because, you know, they will be, I would assume, wanting to get as much out of that as possible. And they'll be very timid around, like, yeah, I think respect is the best. Yeah. Compared to, if you don't do that, you'll never get those opportunities again, right? You're fearful of losing on the environment that you're currently in.
Interesting. So thank you for sharing that, Adam. I appreciate that. I've to me, my language, and this is why I love talking to people, because I'm like, some people's word of I fear God, or their interpretation of this word or what it means to them is slightly different. And my last question of the podcast, you'll see what I'm talking about with this, is I love talking to people about what they experience and how that experience is for them. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I fear God, and someone else will hear it and they'll be like, why would you fear God? Like, that's so stupid, like whatever. But then you share it and you're like, oh, this is a reverence and a respect and understanding of the glory, the magnificence, and the sacredness of this all-loving, powerful being in my life. And I want to be connected at all times as best I can. Yeah. And I am not scared and like, oh my God. It's more of like, I have such I'm putting words in your mouth, but correct me if I'm wrong. You have such a level of value and importance to be connected. Yeah. That to not be is like, I don't ever want that. And totally. So it's like, so that's what I was trying to kind of point to, is that there's a saying of like, and I often have said this, is like, I'm not anti-war, I'm pro-peace.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're anti-war, you need a war to be anti-war.
Yeah.
Pro-peace, you can have Mother Teresa said this.
Pro-peace without
Pro-peace
any
without.
war. Yeah.
So for you, fear of God, to me, is in my brain is like anti-war. I'm like, no, I want to be pro-God.
Right,
I want
right.
to, you know what I'm saying? I want to love God. I don't
Yeah.
want to be, I don't fear him like, oh my God, but I have a deep and utmost respect because I know when I'm off path,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid that like, oh, God's going to hate me. I'm like, I know what's coming. It's going to be a brick in the side of the head or some sort of slap.
Totally. Or
You know?
like in the Bible, it says like, where were you? Like, you know, like, here, Lord, here I am. He's like, I don't know you. Like, and it's like that. Could you imagine going through your life, living for yourself, doing things not for God, but for yourself, getting there and being like, yo, God, what's up? And him being like, I don't know who you are. Like, this is not, and that's.
And you wouldn't know God either. Because you don't have the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. And that should be petrifying to everyone. That should like, and again, not because of where you go, but because of where you don't get to go.
Yeah.
And that's where you're maybe like, you know, anti-war, pro-peace, like the missing out in the abundance that God has for us here on earth, and then also in heaven. I mean, yeah.
I want to pivot to a little bit of Bitcoin. Well, this is a big passion for you.
Yeah.
How have you woven in your spiritual faith, your own sort of journey in your life into how you've built this business? And where does the direction with Bitcoin Well? What do you hope to achieve with it?
Yeah, our mission at Bitcoin Well is to enable independence. And we want to do that by making Bitcoin as easy to use. Bitcoin is obviously a freedom tool. People often confuse it for an investment, and then they invest in it and realize that it's a freedom tool and they change their mindset. I would say that, only recently have I started leaning into that mission and that passion and then bringing Jesus into that, because before I was disconnected. It did feel like two separate worlds, but I didn't have that overarching mission of enabling independence, that overarching mission of having the ability to speak to Bitcoiners and have them listen. And only in the last few years have I, felt like I earned or have been given that. And, that's kind of where I'm choosing now to use it more for, I've got this like in the presentation, there's like three parts to your Bitcoin journey. There's pre-Bitcoin maximalist, and there's Bitcoin maximalist. Those are the two like Bitcoin things. And then there's follower of Jesus. And it from my mind on a logic center, there's the 1, 2, 3 jump there. And emphasizing that and then diving into the why behind that, has been good. So I think that's been good. And then also like being mission focused, like we just have to, when every single decision you make is centered around, does this or does this not enable independence? It's just everything gets so much easier. Wow,
dude. Do you have this on your company mission statement or thing about interweaving Jesus into?
No.
Okay.
The company is pretty agnostic. And I wrestled with that. I wonder if I should, like, I am one with the brand. But I wouldn't say that the brand itself is a Christian brand. I think it's cool how, like, I think the most famous one is In-N-Out Burger, how they've got the Bible verses on the bottom of their cups is pretty interesting. I think there's a couple other faith-based businesses that are like, relatively agnostic, but for a few little tidbits here and there. And there's some possibility to be able to weave that in. Got to figure out the best way to do that probably.
Yeah.
And, but no, it's definitely not. Our mission is very much enable independence by giving people the ability to use Bitcoin. And so, maybe I'll have to start looking into how to do that.
Yeah, maybe Jesus is a Bitcoiner.
Maybe that's how.
So can you give us, because I wanted a little Cole's notes of the Jesus is Bitcoiner, can you give everybody just a snippet of what that message is that you communicated in that presentation? Yeah,
so speaking to a group of, assumed non-believers or questioning individuals, we kind of dive into why we should be investigating God, because there's really two options. There's like God or nothing, and you have to kind of figure out which one you're going to go down. It's like in my mind, pretty logical that it's God. And so we need to then, which God? And we just dive into the teachings of the Bible and the teachings of Jesus, most of them historical. Like we don't talk about, we don't talk about some of the stories of the Bible. We talk about the teachings and the historical facts of the Bible. And then I relate them back to, being a Bitcoiner. So like, for example, just on like the macro, you think about Jesus, his mission was to come to earth and save the earth. But he did that by having a group of 12 individuals to then speak life into them so that they could then go out and decentralize the church. At the time, the Roman Empire was
centralization, the fiat, the Fed.
Incredibly centralized.
Right.
They controlled, who you worshipped, when you worshipped.
Right.
It was back, it wasn't God focused. It was like, we worship God, but like, let's all look to Caesar and praise. And they're like, okay, you Jews, you can do whatever you want, but like, don't do it in front of me because like I am the master. And then Jesus comes down and is like, hey, all this doesn't matter. Respect that. But like, let's go do our own thing and start our own movement peacefully. And that's like super Bitcoiner, right? Peaceful protest. That's what like Jesus came to do. And then there's this really incredible story in the book of Matthew where Jesus and some disciples are hanging around and they're like, I imagine like in a park or wherever, there's like picnics going on and stuff. And one of the disciples is like, hey, Jesus, like, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus kind of looks around and he like finds a kid. He's like, hey, kid, come here. And he's like, hey, whoever is like this kid, that's who's going to get into heaven. And people are like, what are you talking about? And Jesus is like, no. It's not about actually being a kid. It's about being humble. It's about whoever is as humble as this child will be the only ones who can enter. Forget being great in heaven. You're only getting into heaven if you humble yourself.
It was an innocence. Wasn't there innocence in there as well?
Yeah, like childlike innocence. Yeah, exactly. And so, you hear that. It wasn't like, you got to convert the most people. You got to make sure that you're praying at 7 a.m. and then noon and then 7 p.m. and fasting. And all that's important. And that's how you grow to God. But you only get there, like humbling yourself is the first step. And in Bitcoin, I mean, you heard me say it in my, when we were on the roast there, like, you stay humble and stack sats. That's what Bitcoiners is. It's like, I think that's actually, it either still is or for a period of time was in the bottom of like in the footer of our website. Stay humble, stack sats. And that ethos of humility is so important in Bitcoin and so important to Jesus and to his teachings. And so, I give a couple of examples, but it's really just pulling that out, pulling the themes of Jesus's teachings and saying like, hey, we as Bitcoiners, we embody this. So we establish that there's a God. Then we have to choose which God we do. And it's like, well, like it's the one that aligns with us and that wants a better humanity. And then, I haven't brought this in, but I think I'm going to, like, the key difference between the Christian story and literally every other religion is the sacrifice of Christ. And everyone else is you serve me. And Christianity is the only one where it's like, no, I'm going to serve you. And that's a pretty heavy thing to experience and the clear differentiator. And so I would say as a whole, the presentation is designed to draw conclusions from the Bible that bring Bitcoiners closer to a path with Jesus. And then, from like most of the people I talk to are maximalists. So they've done the pre-maxi stage. Yeah. They then humbled themselves and got to the maxi stage. They weren't no longer chasing fiat gains and Lambos. Like, no, I'm chasing, generational wealth and abundance. And then I'm kind of like, hey, remember when you humbled yourself and like got to this middle phase? There's another phase and it's a relationship with Jesus. And here's why, I think you that, share that. And here's why I want to share that. Exactly.
Yeah. Nice, Adam. My favorite question to ask my guests on my podcast is called the magic painting question. And I came up with this while I was hanging out on set one day. We were shooting a television show that I was working on, and it was before cell phones. So we were sitting there bored, setting up lights, and I was
solitary.
Whatever. And I find some of my most creative and fun ideas are when I'm like a child, just being bored, playing, walking around, whatever, right? Not distracting myself. Anyways, so this idea comes into my head, or this question, and the question goes like this: if you had on your wall a magic painting, and anytime you looked at this painting, you could feel any type of feeling you wanted to feel to any degree that you wanted to feel it, what feeling would you choose, and what would be on your painting to represent that?
Yeah, I would probably choose passion. I think that passion is something I've never lacked, but I get the most done when I'm feeling inspired and passionate about the subject that I'm thinking about. What would be there is probably like very, very, very old man or dead Adam with like, my legacy behind me. And hopefully it's, a lot of people, but also it would have like, their offshoots and like,
wow.
Like the tertiary and the fourth and the fifth rung of my ripple, in this world. Cause really like, dude, like, how many people are we going to touch? We're going to touch 100, 1,000, maybe like you're just like insane. You're so into such a million people. That's like not that many. Like if you can actually change a million people's lives, that's huge. But like come on, that's like, not even a percentage of California. Like it's so minuscule. But when those million people, talk to 2, boom, double. And if they talk to 5, like now we're talking about some serious exponential growth. And so it would just be a reminder of, the end. Like, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the moment. It's easy to understand that, or maybe think that you're not gonna, that this won't end. But then that means that both the pain will end, but also the success will end. Like at all times, everything ends. And it's important, I think, to remember that this is going to end.
Yeah.
And so what is the secondary and tertiary and further effects of your actions today? And I would want to feel very passionate about that.
And you said it's inspiring as well. It's an inspired passion.
Yeah. Like I've never been one that responds to whips.
Yeah.
I'm much more going to respond to a carrot. I think a very healthy amount of confidence that I'm in the right direction and my ship is pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
And we are sailing at the right speed.
Yeah.
Because too fast is almost as dangerous as too slow.
Yeah.
And so we're at the right speed in the right direction.
Beautiful.
And going towards the right place, I guess.
Okay. This is great, Adam. Thank you for sharing this. I've learned so much from you in this podcast.
Oh,
it's
wow.
fantastic.
Thanks,
the painting is also amazing. Similar back to your question or your insights about like seeing yourself 30 years down the road of partying guys. This is who I want to be. Like seeing into the future.
Right.
And is this the path I want? And is this the best way to get there?
Yeah.
So similar to your magic painting now, it's like seeing your life 30 years beyond after you've passed, and all the sort of ripple effects of your passion and your insight and your inspiration has now rippled through your children, your children's children, all the friends and the businesses you've made. Wow. And it's just rippling out also with your faith being infused through that, I'm assuming.
100%.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the last part of this question.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting inspired and jacked up right now on this.
Let's go.
As an actor, I'm feeding off this, right? This is fantastic because I'm learning your unique feeling of passion and inspiration in the way you experience it. So if you were to try to teach somebody who had never felt this before, try to explain to them how this feels in your body, this feeling of passion and inspiration. When you think about your magic painting, where do you feel it in your body and what is it like?
Yeah, you feel it physically in your heart. It feels like energy. It feels like you had way too much coffee or like, you had 30 nights of sleep, perfect sleep where, you're like at bed on time. You get like the 90-minute sleep cycle is like peak and then you wake up and go. You got the sunlight and you got the bath and like whatever all the morning hacks are supposed to be. You got it all for a month. And it's like, it's compounded so good. And then you just like jacked it up with a pile of coffee. And then I would couple in some like paternal, like, when someone's hurt, like, I mean, I have kids, but like, if my kid's under a car, I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to lift the car, right?
Right, okay.
And like, can I lift the car to get $1 million? No. Can I lift the car to move to the other side? No. But if my kid's under there, you better believe that car is going up. And I'm like, I'm 160 pounds. I'm not moving any cars on a regular basis. Wow. And it's that. And then the level. Unstoppable. But then the level of confidence that you can, or the delusion that it doesn't matter if you can't, you just will. You will. Wow, and like, there's no reason other than delusional confidence and Jesus that I've been able to do lots of the things that I've done, even that I've been able to, like, when certain things happen and I get hurt and I'm just like, all good, or the timing of it was perfect, or, the ability to look back and think like, oh, thank goodness for that. Like, it's only out of a delusional confidence that I can do anything with the respect and trust that someone's got my back the entire way. Because again, when you're marching towards, not for your own accord, but for someone else who also happens to be the creator of the entire world and divine, you kind of have this level of like swagger where it's like, I'm going to misstep, but like, God's going to plant some bridges and help me get over those cruxes, or let me fall. And thank you.
Teach you something,
letting me fall.
Yeah.
There's this awesome picture, and I'll send it to you. You can put it in the. This is obviously filmed, so I'll put it in the thing. And it's my son, and it's like 2 weeks ago. He's got these torched knees, like my little 2-year-old. His knees are bleeding, but he fell, like smoked.
Yeah.
His knees, got back up, didn't cry. He just kind of kept on going. And my buddy I was with was like, hey, should we get him? I was like, no. He's good. Let him be. And he kind of got up, looked at his knees, like, ouchie, knees. And then he just kept on walking. Wow. And I was like, this is because he's done this 1,000 times. And I've kind of like, you got to figure this out, pal. You got to figure out how you're going to do things.
Yeah.
And it's been positive.
Dude, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that you did, being on the podcast. I loved this. This is fantastic. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you want to share with people, or where they can find you? some of those things, a message of any sort you want to share?
Yeah, I think seek humility would be one. People need to, more than anything, find a purpose and understand why you are waking up in the morning. So much more than just because I want to provide for my family. Like it's bigger than that. Why do you want to provide for your family? Why do you want X, Y, and Z? And if you don't have a good answer for that, like find that good answer. Look inside, read books, talk to Jesus, read the Bible, and understand why he put you here on earth. Because I promise there's a reason that you're here right now in 2024. Like you're not in the 1800s and you're also not in the 2500s. You're here in the 21st century for a really specific reason. And if you don't know why that is, just be like, yo, Jesus, what am I doing here? Like, can you please show me? And then actually humble yourself to find it, and like your life will change.
Take action too.
Boom.
Adam, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man.
Let's get out of here. Let's get something to eat. I'm hungry.
Let's go.
Okay. Start her up. Oh yeah, we're gonna close this.
Thank you.
Well, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for watching this episode all the way to the end. Now, I have a question for you before you go, and I would love for you to answer it and share your thoughts, your ideas, and your own perspective with me in the comments below. It's a question that I asked Adam during this episode, and it was around the concept of fearing God. Now, he had an explanation for it that I really enjoyed and I really liked and I resonated with. He said it was a deep reverence and respect, like a heavenly father, that he knew the significance of the position in his life. He wanted to honor God. He wanted to honor and respect and have reverence for that relationship and guiding his life. And I thought that was fantastic. Personally, the idea of fear didn't resonate with me. I've always understood fear to be an acronym for false evidence appearing real. So I thought, well, my relationship to God isn't some sort of false evidence appearing real, like something fake. I have a genuine connection. It's my most sacred relationship in my life. So the idea of respect and reverence, and for me personally, a sacredness, that's how I view that relationship in my life. But I'm curious for you. Do you resonate with this idea of a fear of God? If not, why not? And what is it like? And if you do resonate with this idea of fearing God, what does that mean to you specifically? Please drop a comment and let me know. I'm sure others would love to read it. I know I would. I think it would be fantastic. So before you go, please take some time and share that with everybody. Your relationship to God or a higher power or whatever you call it, whatever you deem the most sacred in your life, that guides you in your life, that helps you, supports you, and moves you forward. What is that relationship like? How do you describe it? Please drop that in the comments below. I'd love to read it. I want to thank each and every one of you who have supported this podcast and made it possible. You know who you are. You donated, you shared this, you send it to your friends and your family. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you guys, and I am truly, truly grateful for your support. It means the world to me. So thank you. Adam, thank you again for being on the show, man. It was fun shooting that kind of unique intro. I hope you guys enjoyed that, where I was asleep and he came and woke me up for the podcast because I had slipped past my alarm. I don't know where that idea came from. I just thought it would be really funny to start the episode that way. Something new, something different. I like to try new things. I like to create little moments, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Adam, thanks for playing along and having some fun with me there to start this episode of the podcast. I want to give a little last PSA about scammers to wrap this up. As I said in my last episode, there's scammers out there. Man, there's a lot of them. So just be aware, be vigilant. I have a disclaimer below the video and in the show notes here, just letting everybody know what's going on and the scams and the people that are out there trying to take advantage of just innocent people out there. So please be aware, please stay vigilant and do your homework, keep your head on a swivel and stay active. I think that's the most important thing. If we expect others to figure this all out and we don't have to take any responsibility for our actions and everything will be worked out if we just turn over our rights and our freedoms to some all-powerful authority like the government, it doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way. And I just want to say that it's important that we take responsibility for our lives, that we stay vigilant, and we hold these people accountable if we can, whether it be through our local law enforcement or getting involved in politics to introduce better protection mechanisms or policing efforts to go after those people. I think that's important. When I say protection efforts, I don't mean censorship and I don't mean digital IDs, because that's something that I am totally not in support of. What I mean is creating awareness to protect ourselves from these scams by having conversations like this. So that's what I wanted to say. Stay vigilant out there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode all the way to the end. And again, please drop your comments below about your own understanding and your own relationship to a higher power, whether that be God, and if you fear God, and if not, What is your relationship with God? What is that like? Please drop that in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.